So for more insight, it's a pleasure to welcome to studio international affairs analyst Dan Perry, former Europe and Middle East editor at the Associated Press. Should Israel be sending a delegation to Cairo as we speak?
I think it's reasonable to make demands, to set conditions for sending that delegation. And of course, it is outrageous that Hamas won't even tell the world how many of the hostages are living. Really, every time you think they can sink no lower, they somehow manage to surprise. So I'm not a big fan of how Israel has carried out its public diplomacy in this war. A lot of things about it, but this is reasonable, of course.
As we are speaking, we know that there is major pressure from the United States on the way Israel is conducting the war, as you use that phrase. Yet there was a poll in recent days from Harvard-Harris revealing that 82% of Americans support Israel in this war, 68% saying they believe Israel is doing what it can to avoid civilian casualties. Obviously, results on a poll like that will change each day. But your sense of the level of support out of the US right now to what is unfolding as we speak?
It's remarkably significant. And I think it comes down to largely Biden siding with Israel to such a degree that undoubtedly that influences US Democrats because the Republicans are more or less on side. Regardless, and again, that attaches to what I've called a degree of ingratitude by the current government, part of the current government, who has lambasted Biden almost as much as they lambast Mahmoud Abbas. I think it's very good. It shows that not all is lost. There certainly is a problem with Gen Z and the youth, who are very influenced by TikTok and the algorithms that are undoubtedly not inclined to favor Israel. And look, most of the world, at the end of the day, those elements in the world that are not ignorant, and I mean most of the leaders in the West, do agree with Israel's goal of removing Hamas. Almost, how could you not? Friend or foe of Israel, no one can possibly want Hamas to continue to survive as the government of Gaza that took power by a coup and has oppressed and made miserable over 2 million Palestinians for the past 17 years, never mind the ridiculous frequent provocations of Israel with rocket fire, which are an act of insanity. And we now know that the billions of dollars that went into Gaza were used to build this underground country, not city. Imagine what could have been done with that had they chosen to act otherwise. But of course they could not, because we're talking about a terrorist mafia. Therefore, obviously, the irony here is that the world does have sympathy for Israel in Gaza. The problem is that in order to put up with the ugliness of this war in Gaza, by and large, the world wants to exact a payment in the West Bank. That is the thing that is stopping everything. Israel's status quo in the West Bank, which includes settlements deep inside the territories where Jews have rights and their Palestinian neighbors do not. This is not working for the world, and honestly, it's not working for most of Israel, including most of the heads of the Shin Bet who are against this arrangement. The world insists on a day-after plan that would not only restore the PA to Gaza for all its imperfections, but would begin a diplomatic process aimed at partition. Netanyahu cannot give them this, which is why he's at loggerheads with the world right now, which endangers the war effort because the window is closing rapidly.
You talk about the imperfections within the West Bank. There's a major problem in the groundswell of support that Hamas has in the West Bank as we speak.
That the Palestinians support Hamas at such high levels, more, by the way, in the West Bank than in Gaza, as far as we can tell, is a disgrace to the Palestinian people. And you'll hear a variety of excuses about how A, they're traumatized, B, they view Hamas as at least fighting, C, the PA is corrupt and so there's no one else. But you know what? There's no way around it. Hamas's raison d'etre for the past 35 years that they've been an organization of prominence, and especially since '93 when the Oslo Accord was signed, was largely and mainly and almost purely to impede efforts towards a two-state solution with shootings and suicide bombings and every kind of terrorism and every kind of fevered machination to move the Israeli public to the right, to make the Palestinian public lose hope, and catastrophically, to a large degree, they succeeded. So all I can say is the Palestinians really should learn their own history, and unless they want to live by the sword forevermore, and to keep on provoking a stronger power. And by the way, to reject the hand of peace that most of Israel is extending to them. If only they would take it, then yeah, support Hamas. Otherwise, think again.
And turning to political tensions between Benjamin Netanyahu and War Cabinet Minister Benny Gantz, the Prime Minister reportedly furious because he hadn't given the green light for the former military chief and former defense minister to go to Washington, where he's meeting with Vice President Kamala Harris and others. Still in studio, Dan Perry. There are some suggesting Benjamin Netanyahu has every right to be furious about this trip unfolding as we speak in D.C. Your thoughts?
Well, it depends where you frame the picture. In terms of Gantz's failing to ask for permission, of course he's right, obviously. The bigger picture is that Gantz is doing him a favor by being in a government and lending a shred of legitimacy to a government that has been completely discredited even in the eyes of most Israelis. A poll just today showed about 70-some% would vote for the opposition if there was an election today. So, yeah, of course, Gantz can be seen as setting the stage for a future different Israeli government led by him. And by the way, one that would, unlike Netanyahu, engage Biden or whoever is president on a regional deal that would yield for Israel normalization with Saudi Arabia and a U.S. Sunni Israeli front against Iran, and a lot of good things if only Israel would agree to discuss what to do with the Palestinians, which Netanyahu refuses to do. So, look, Biden certainly has had it with Netanyahu. He is working around Netanyahu via Benny Gantz. Gantz agrees to have that happen, and it's not very collegial. But how collegial is it really going to be when Gantz is, according to every poll, the prime minister in waiting, and he's the major electoral challenger to Netanyahu?
What is a successful trip for Benny Gantz right now? He's got some big meetings.
He's going to meet with Blinken and Harris and some others. A successful trip is one where Jake Sullivan. Yeah. Look, he can't, on behalf of the government, accept the Biden doctrine. That was everything I just said, of course. But he can more than hint that he thinks that he would represent it to the Israeli government. Realistically, the most successful outcome of anything Benny Gantz does right now, of course, a major high-profile trip to the U.S. that offends the prime minister, would be to somehow engineer a political circumstance that would bring down a government and bring about elections. Because what he wants, Benny Gantz, is to have elections happen as soon as conceivably possible, with the polls being so kind to him. That will require the convincing of 5 Knesset members from the pre-Gantz coalition of 64.
And that segues beautifully into the issue, the protest today close to B'nai Brak, the issue of draft laws, the issue of religious ultra-Orthodox youth having to enlist in the IDF. It's been around for a long time, this issue, but it's coming to the forefront right now. Could this ultimately topple the government? Could this be one of the reasons there will be elections down the line? How do you see it unfolding?
100%. There is a self-imposed ultimatum. Also the Supreme Court is demanding it. There is a version of an ultimatum, of a deadline, for the government to table the law formally exempting all Haredim from military duty forevermore. And the defense minister, who's meant to be the person who tables that law, just said he won't do it unless the center-left agrees, which they won't. And the Haredim are threatening to bring down a government if Netanyahu doesn't find a workaround. Expect feverish machinations, but if he tries a workaround, there will be millions in the streets, because we're looking here at a true outrage that is interesting on a global level. You have a situation that requires universal conscription. Theoretically, you have it. And yet, a particular group claiming that religious study is so important that it can't be delayed for a few years insists on being exempt informally. And that group now accounts for between a fifth and a quarter of all draft-age male Jews in Israel. And it's only going to grow. It can't continue. And the same poll today showed 2/3 of the public wants them drafted.
20 seconds left. I'm putting you on the spot. You mentioned a workaround. What could that look like briefly?
The government could table that law, in which case Gallant may end up resigning. But the same poll showed Gallant would take 9 seats if he formed his own party. And I do believe Gallant is going to be the latest in the proud list of Likud leaders who found themselves too rational to stay in the Likud. And that includes Sharon, Olmert, Livni, and others.
Dan Perry, unpacking all the latest details and the implications as always. Thank you so much.